Okay. Let's see. Then the MC called to us. Come up here, boys, and get your money. We ran forward to where the men laughed and talked in their chairs, waiting. Everyone seemed friendly now. There it is on the rug, the man said. I saw the rug covered in coins of all dimensions and a few crumpled bills. What excited me, scattered here and there, were gold pieces. Boys, it's all yours, the man said. You get all you grab. That's right, Sambo, a blond man said, winking at me confidently. Now, some of the language in this book you might have noticed is not it's not very politically correct. It's not meant to be offensive. Ellison uses the words that he knows and uses the words that would have been used to describe him in that time period. It makes it very realistic. Makes it kind of puts you in that time period. I trembled with excitement, forgetting my pain. I would get the gold and the bills, I thought. I'd use both hands. I'd throw my body against the boys nearest me to block them from the gold. Get get down around the rug now, the man commanded. Don't anyone touch it until I give the signal. This ought to be good, I heard. As told, we got around the square rug on our knees. Slowly the man raised his freckled hand as we followed it upward with our eyes. I heard, these niggers look like they're about to pray. Then, ready? The man said. Go. I lunged for a yellow coin lying on the blue design of the carpet, touching it and sending a surprised shriek to join those rising around me. I tried frantically to remove my hand, but couldn't let go. A hot, violent force tore through my body, shaking me like a wet rat. The rug was electrified. The hair bristled up on my head as I shook myself free. My muscles jumped, the nerves jangled, writhed. But I saw that this was not stopping the other boys. Laughing in fear and embarrassment, some were holding back and scooping up the coins knocked off by the painful contortions of others. The men roared above us as we struggled. So they electrified the rug that they put their pay on. They were all covered in sweat, and they electrified the rug. Pick it up, goddammit, pick it up, someone called, like a bass voice parrot. Go on, get it. I crawled rapidly around the floor, picking up the coins, trying to avoid the coppers and to get greenbacks and the gold. Ignoring the shot by laughing as I brushed the coins off quickly, I discovered that I could contain the electricity. A contradiction, but it works. Then the men began to push us onto the rug. Laughing embarrassingly, we struggled out of their hands and kept after the coins. We were all wet and slippery and hard to hold. Suddenly I saw a boy lifted into the air, glistening with sweat like a circus seal, and dropped, his wet back landing flush upon the charged rug. Heard him yell and saw him literally dance upon his back, his elbows beating a frenzied tattoo upon the floor, his muscles twitching like the flesh of a horse stung by many flies. When he finally rolled off, his face was gray, and no one stopped him when he ran from the floor amid booming laughter. Get the money, the MC called. That's good hard American cash. And we snatched and grabbed. I was careful not to come too close to the rug now, and when I felt the hot whiskey breath descend upon me like a cloud of foul air, I reached out and grabbed the leg of a chair. It was occupied, and I held on desperately. Let go, nigger, let go. The huge face wavering down to mine as he tried to push me free. But my body was slippery and he was too drunk. It was Mr. Colcord, who owned a chain of movie houses and entertainment palaces. Each time he grabbed me, I slipped out of his hands. It became a real struggle. I feared the rug more than I did the drunk, so I held on, surprising myself for a moment by trying to topple him on the rug. It was such an enormous idea that I found myself actually carrying it out. I tried not to be obvious, yet when I grabbed his leg, trying to tumble him out of the chair, he raised up roaring with laughter, and looking at me with soberness dead in the eye, kicked me viciously in the chest. The chair flew out my hand, and I felt myself going and rolled. It was as though I'd rolled through a bed of hot coals. It seemed a whole century would pass before I'd roll free, a century in which I was seared through the deepest levels of my body to the fearful breath within me, and the breath seared and heated to the point of explosion. It'll all be over in a flash, I thought as I rolled clear. It'll all be over in a flash. But not yet. The men on the other side were waiting, red faces swollen as though from apoplexy, as they bent forward in their chairs. Seeing their fingers coming toward me, I rolled away as a fumbled football rolls off the receiver's fingertips back into the coals. That time I luckily sent the rug sliding out of place and heard the coins ring against the floor, the boys scuffling to pick them up, the MC calling, "All right, boys, that's all. Go get dressed and get your money." I was limp as a dish rag. My back felt as though it had been beaten with wires. When we had dressed, the MC came in and gave us each $5, except Tatlock, who got 10 for being last in the ring. Then he told us to leave. I was not to get a chance to deliver my speech, I thought. I was going out into the dim alley in despair when I was stopped and told to go back. I returned to the ballroom where the men were pushing back their chairs together in groups to talk. The MC knocked on a table for quiet. Gentlemen, he said, we almost forgot an important part of the program. A most serious part, gentlemen. This boy was brought here to deliver a speech, which he made at his graduation yesterday. Now, he'd been put through all of that, and then they called him back to give the speech. And I want you to realize they're calling him boy. They're infantilizing him. They're making him less than them. Because by calling somebody a boy, you're putting them below you, right? Bravo. I'm told he's the smartest boy we got out there in Greenwood. I'm told he knows more words than a pocket-sized dictionary. That's offensive, right? Like, a regular dictionary knows all the words. A pocket-sized dictionary doesn't know all the words, and he knows more than that. That's not a compliment, okay? Much applause and laughter. So now, gentlemen, I want you to give your attention. There's still laughter as I faced them, my mouth dry, my eyes throbbing. I began slowly, but evidently my throat was tense because they began shouting, louder, louder. We of the younger generation extol the wisdom of that great leader and educator, I shouted, who first spoke these flaming words of wisdom. A ship lost at sea for many days suddenly sighted a friendly vessel. From the mast of the unfortunate vessel was seen a signal. Water, water, we die of thirst. The answer from the friendly vessel came back. Cast down your bucket where you are. The captain of the distressed vessel, at last heeding the injunction, cast down his bucket, and it came up full of fresh sparkling water from the mouth of the Amazon River. And like him I say, and in his words, to those of my race who depend upon bettering their condition in a foreign land, or who underestimate the importance of cultivating friendly relations with the southern white man who is his next-door neighbor, I would say, cast down your bucket where you are. Cast it down in making friends in every manly way of the people of all races by whom we're surrounded. So he's basically feeding them their own BS. He's saying, you know, there isn't any reason for you to leave and go anywhere. You'll be fine here. Cast down your bucket. Be educated here. Work here. You don't need to go off anywhere else to become educated and to better yourself. I spoke automatically and with such fervor that I did not realize that the men were still talking and laughing until my dry mouth, filling up with blood from the cut, almost strangled me. I coughed, wanting to stop and go to one of the tall brass Sandfield spittoons to relieve myself. But a few of the men, especially my superintendent, were listening, and I was afraid. So I gulped it down, blood, saliva, and all, and continued. And you guys know spittoon is like these brass, they were like decorative and stuff, and people would dip inside and they would spit in there, so they would just fill up with spit and tobacco and grossness. Anyway, what powers of endurance I had during those days. What enthusiasm. What a belief in the rightness of things. I spoke even louder in spite of the pain, but still they talked and still they laughed, as though deaf with cotton and dirty ears. So I spoke with greater emotional emphasis. I closed my eyes and swallowed blood until I was nauseated. The speech seemed 100 times as long before, but I couldn't leave out a single word. All had to be said, each memorized nuance, considered, rendered. Nor was that all. Whenever I uttered a word of 3 or more syllables, a group of voices would yell for me to repeat it. I used the phrase social responsibility, and they yelled. What's that word you say, boy? Social responsibility, I said. What? Social. Louder. Responsibility. More. Respond. Repeat. Stability. The room filled with the uproar of laughter until, no doubt distracted by having to gulp down my blood, I made a mistake and yelled a phrase I had seen denounced in newspaper editorials, heard debated in private. Social. What? They yelled. Equality. The laughter hung smoke-like in the sudden stillness. I opened my eyes, puzzled. Sudden displeasure filled the room. The MC rushed forward. They shouted hostile phrases at me, but I didn't understand. A small, dry-mustached man in the front row blared out, "Say that slowly, son." "What, sir?" "What you just said." "Social responsibility, sir," I said. "You weren't being smart, were you, boy?" he said, nodding kindly. "No, sir." You sure that about equality was a mistake?" "Oh, yes, sir," I said. "I was swallowing blood." "Well, you better speak more slowly so we can understand. We mean to do right by you, but you got to know your place at all times." "All right, now go on with your speech." So he had said equality. He would have gotten beaten. He's supposed to know his place at all times. Well, his place is not equal to the white men in the room for sure. The Smoker is really kind of a snapshot into race relations, into how men treated both minorities and women. I mean, it's exaggerated, yeah, but they still didn't treat them as equals, and they didn't treat them well. They treated them like property. They used them for entertainment. They didn't respect them, and they sure as heck didn't listen to them at all until they said something they didn't want to hear, and then they sure as heck did listen to them. So, so I was afraid. I wanted to leave, but I wanted also to speak, and I was afraid they'd snatch me down. Thank you, sir, I said, beginning where I'd left off and having them ignore me as before. Yet when I finished, there was a thunderous applause. I was surprised to see the superintendent come forth with a package wrapped in white tissue paper, and gesturing for quiet, addressed the men. Gentlemen, you see, I did not overpraise this boy. He makes a good speech, and someday he'll lead his people in the proper paths. So he's talking about leading his people in the proper paths. He's talking about how, this black boy knows how his place, and he knows how he's supposed to act, and he wants him to lead other black people in the way that they're supposed to go. Not necessarily the way that they want to go, not, like to fulfill their destiny or anything, but in the way that the white people want them to go, okay? And I don't have to tell you that this is important in these days and times. This is a good, smart boy, and so to encourage him in the right direction, in the name of the Board of Education, I wish to present him a prize in the form of this. He paused, removing the tissue paper and revealing a gleaming calfskin briefcase. In the form of this first-class article from Shad Whitmore's shop. Boy, he said, addressing me, take this prize and keep it well. Consider it a badge of office. Prize it. Keep developing as you are, and someday it'll be filled with important papers that will help shape the destiny of your people. So I felt as though he was bestowing something upon him. I was so moved I could hardly express my thanks. A rope of bloody saliva forming a shape like an undiscovered continent drooled upon the leather, and I wiped it quickly away. I felt an importance that I'd never dreamed. Open it and see what's inside, I was told. My fingers are trembling. I complied, smelling the fresh leather and finding an official-looking document inside. It was a scholarship to the State College for Negroes. My eyes filled with tears, and I ran awkwardly off the floor. I was overjoyed. I didn't even mind when I discovered that the gold pieces I had scrambled for were brass pocket tokens advertising a certain make of automobile. When I reached home, everyone was excited. Next day, the neighbors came to congratulate me. I even felt safe from grandfather, whose deathbed curse usually spoiled my triumphs. I stood beneath his photograph with my briefcase in hand and smiled triumphantly into his stolid black peasant's face. It was a face that fascinated me. The eyes seemed to follow me everywhere I went. That night I dreamed I was at a circus with him, and he refused to laugh at the clowns no matter what they did. Then later he told me to open my briefcase and read what was inside, and I did, finding an official envelope stamped with a state seal, and inside the envelope I found another and another, endlessly, and I thought I'd fall into weariness. Them's years, he said. Now open that one. And I did, and in it I found an engraved document containing a short message in letters of gold. Read it, my grandfather said, out loud. To whom it may concern, I intoned, keep this nigger boy running. I awoke with the old man's laughter ringing in my ears. It was a dream I was to remember and dream again for many years after that, but at that time I had no insight into its meaning. First, I had to attend college. So, he's attending college, not like you guys are to further yourself, but he is furthering himself, but it's not in his own ways. It's in the way that the white people want him to act. So, this is his invisibility, right? Guys, remember, if you have any questions while you're reading or about the reading, email me, and I will get those figured out for you. You need to read through Chapter 3 by Monday, so you're going to read, we already read the prologue in Chapter 1, so you're going to read Chapters 2 and 3 and be ready to discuss those in class on Monday. Thanks, guys.